to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Remain standing for the prayer and a moment of silence.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mrs. Panos, the prayer, please.
O Lord, bless thy servants in the ministry of public affairs who serve thee in this chamber. Give them quiet minds and hearts that they may hear thy voice. Help them to know when to speak, when to be silent. Give them strength to oppose the wrong and uphold the right. And grant that they have a good conscience and soul at peace with thee and with one another.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence. I'd like to honor the men and women that are fighting to preserve our freedoms, both home and abroad, our first responders, for those who've given the ultimate sacrifice. In addition, tonight I'd like to have a moment of silence for the police officer killed in Sayreville, as well as the tragic accident that happened on Route 9 last week. Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Please be seated.
This meeting is being held in conformance with the Open Public Meetings Act. Notice has been given to the newspaper, and notice of the meeting has been posted in public places. Next open public meeting of the council will be held on Monday, April 11, 2016, 7:30 p.m. Mr. Butler. Dr. Greenberg. Mr. Green. Mr. Mollis.
Here.
Mrs. Panos.
Here.
Mr. Rosencrantz.
Here.
Mrs. Sohar. Mrs. Walker. President Cahill.
Here.
9 present.
We have a quorum. Move on to the approval of minutes of the previous meeting, combined minutes of February 22nd, 2016. Any council comments, questions, additions, corrections? Seeing and hearing none, can I have a motion, please?
I'll move it.
Second.
By Mr. Rosencrantz, second by Mrs. Panos. Roll call, please.
Butler.
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg. Mr. Green. Mr. Mollis.
Yes.
Mrs. Panos.
Yes.
Mr. Rosencrantz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar. Mrs. Walker. Yes. President Cahill.
Yes.
9 yes.
Moving on to the bill listing, Mr. Rosencrantz.
Thank you, Council President. Bill list combined meeting March 21st, 2016. Accounts payable March 21st, 2016, $2,619,659.20.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Moved by Mrs. Panos, second by Mr. Mollis. Any questions? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg. Mr. Green. Mr. Mollis.
Yes.
Mrs. Panos.
Yes.
Mr. Rosencrantz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar. Mrs. Walker. Yes. President Cahill.
Yes.
9 yes.
Payroll March 18th, 2016, $843,051.97.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Moved by Mrs. Panos,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Green. Any questions, comments? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg. Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Mollis.
Yes.
Mrs. Panos.
Yes.
Mr. Rosencrantz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar. Mrs. Walker. Yes. President Cahill.
Yes.
9 yes.
Payroll overtime, March 18th, 2016, $25,367.38.
Can I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Moved by Mrs. Panos. I'll second it. Mr. Marion?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. The payroll overtime for the payroll period ending March 18th, 2016, $25,367.38. If you look at the information in your packets, you're going to see we're down in some areas. In regards to the police department, we have 317 man and woman hours for a total of 19,156.53. If you sworn police overtime out of that 19,156.53 is 17,237.68. There's no grants. You have earned time off in the amount of 5,716.35 for a total of 11,521.33. We do have one patrol officer still out of medical, and there was also an investigation during this period.
Any questions for Mr. Marion on the overtime? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Butler.
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg. Yes. Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Mollis.
Yes.
Mrs. Panos.
Yes.
Mr. Rosencrantz.
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar. Mrs. Walker. Yes. President Cahill.
Yes.
9 yes.
That concludes the bill list.
Okay, thank you. All right, we're gonna go into the budget. First one is the municipal budget presentation. Sure.
You should take that chair over for him.
There's one right there, no? Oh, yeah, he's gonna get it. So in addition to the mayor, Mr. Shaw and Mr. Maron, we have our auditor, Mr. Allison, with us.
Did you hand it? Oh, Slow's got 'em.
One copy. You need an extra one? No, they're not. Yeah, one for the budget, one for the capital budget.
Yeah, two separate.
Okay. We have enough for each council person? Does each council person have the municipal and then the capital, just to be clear? We'll make sure everybody's got what they need. Okay. Marion, take it away.
Mayor, Council
Oh,
President.
Mr.
I'd
Mayor,
like to
sorry.
just do a brief opening statement. You know, to thank everyone who worked really hard. Seems like it was only last month we were here presenting a budget, but a lot goes into municipal budget. You know, and I have to especially thank Mr. Marion, who put his heart and soul into the budget. He was looking forward to tonight for a long time. Mr. Shah and the entire finance department, who worked, you know, with 2 people down out on maternity leave, again, did a great job in assisting the mayor's office and Mr. Marion putting our budget together. All our department heads who worked real hard with people in their departments did a fantastic job. And I don't have to go back too far in history. A lot of the council knows here. You know, in 2011, let me just state off that the budget in 2011, prior to me becoming elected, was $56.9 million in 2011. Now here we are in 2016, and our budget is $54.2 million. So if you can do the math, we're spending less money in 2016 than we did in 2011. You know, and we're spending less money, and we're providing better services for our residents. And again, in 2016, you know, this room isn't filled with township employees surrounding the outside walls, you know, trying to urge the council to vote on a budget that was filled with flaws, like those budgets were prior to me becoming elected, where they were threatened with layoffs if the council didn't adopt a budget that was filled with one-shot revenues just to get us through that year. You know, tonight's budget, this book, I know it's only a small book, but it's proof. It's proof, you know, that good government can dig its way out of a financial disaster, and we have. It's proof that we can operate under the 2% cap. And it's proof that we can improve and deliver services at a higher level. And at the same time, it's proof, you know, we are financially responsible with taxpayer dollars. So I want to thank the council who participated, came to the committee meetings, and for all your help during the year. I know you've all gone through the budget line by line and see where we're spending every penny that we take in. 20 cents of every tax dollar is what we get to keep and spend. And I believe we provide a lot for that 20 cents, that 20%. So I just want to thank the council in advance. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Marion?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I will apologize for my voice in advance. I've been yelling at the TV set for the last 3 days as my brackets were busted early, except for one specific team. The 2016 municipal budget represents 20% of our total tax rate and is the only portion of the tax bill that the township officials can directly control. This 20% covers the majority of municipal services that are provided to the residents of the township of Old Bridge, including code enforcement, community development, health and senior services, parks and facilities, recreation programs, public safety, and public works. The remaining portion of the tax bill, or 80%, funds the Old Bridge Schools, Old Bridge Public Library, Middlesex County Government, Middlesex County Open Space Program, and 4 fire districts, which include Cheesequake, Lawrence Harbor, Madison Park, and South Old Bridge. As this first slide illustrates, it's a total 2016 tax rate breakdown, and the larger piece of the pie is the school at 58%, municipal at 20%, and then the rest of the other categories that I described before. Next slide breaks that down just a little further. You remember that from last year, apportionment of tax rate. It shows for per $100 of assessed value. And we took an average. This year we did not increase the fire districts. We left that the same as last year just to show we don't have the rates for the fire districts at this time. 2016 municipal budget goals, as we announced at each subcommittee meeting. Maintain or improve core municipal services for the citizens of Old Bridge. Minimize tax impact and remain under statutory caps. Continue to implement a sound and longer-term financial plan for the township and identify potential areas for operational improvements and or cost savings for 2017 and 2018. The 2016 municipal budget development process in September of 2015, we actually start a year, almost a year in advance. September 2015, we send a memo and budget guidelines to department heads. In October, we do department budget requests are submitted to our finance department, and department budget meetings begin with administration. In November and December, we have department budget meetings with administration, and again, we continue to meet on into January. In February, the proposed municipal budget was finalized and transmitted to council on February 19th. We had our municipal budget introduction on February 22nd. We received state aid certification on February, I believe, 29th, because it was a leap year. And we had our first council budget subcommittee meeting. And then in March, we had 2 additional council budget subcommittee meetings. And tonight brings us to the municipal budget public hearing and municipal budget adoption. 2016 municipal budget summary. The proposed municipal budget calls for $51,858,418 in expenditures. Revenues include $6,270,857 in municipal state aid, $1,625,000 in uniform construction code enforcement fees, $3,603,701 in miscellaneous revenue, $475,000 in municipal court fines and costs, $75,000 in interest on investments and deposits, $30,000 in receipts from delinquent taxes, and $33,028,860 as the amount to be raised by taxation. In anticipation of $6,750,000 from fund balance will be required to bring the 2016 budget into balance. This will leave $2,560,866.12 in cash fund balance to help stabilize taxes for 2017. The proposed municipal tax rate is therefore estimated to be 0.961 in 2016, which reflects a tax increase of 0.013 cents over 2015 at a rate of 0.948. For an average home in Old Bridge assessed at $152,500, the proposed municipal tax increase would be $20, and that's from $1,446 in 2015 to $1,466 in 2016. The 2016 library budget summary. The budget library purposes expenditure category is included as an appropriation in the municipal budget. However, since 2011, the amount is deducted from the municipal tax levy in the calculation of the amount to be raised by taxation. The 2016 minimum state required funding for the Old Bridge Public Library, $2,433,732. The associated tax rate is estimated to be 0.071 in 2016, which reflects an increase of 0.004 in the tax rate over 2015 at a rate of 0.067. For an average home in Old Bridge assessed at $152,500, the municipal library tax increase would be $6, and that's from $102 in 2015 to $108 in 2016. We're bringing it all together. The total general appropriation for 2016, including municipal and library purposes, is $54,292,150 compared to $53,018,268.18 in the 2015 budget as modified. This is a total budget increase of $1,273,881.82, or 2.40%. The proposed tax rate for both municipal and municipal library purposes for 2016 is estimated to be 1.032, which reflects a tax increase of 0.017 cents over 2015 at a rate of 1.015. For an average home in Old Bridge assessed at $152,500, the proposed municipal library tax increase would be $26, and that's from $1,548 in 2015 to $1,574 in 2016. Next slide shows you kind of a history going back to 2011 budget comparisons, and you can see from the blue part of the chart that we've tried to keep everything level. And again, as the mayor stated before, we are actually budget is less than it was in 2011. 2016 expenditures. Our salary and wages expenditure category has decreased by $46,382 from $21,098,633 in 2015 to $21,052,251 in 2016. In addition to contractual increases, the 2016 budget includes funding for one new full-time position in the police department, which is a patrol officer, one new full-time position in the senior services division, which is a bus driver, and one new part-time position in the Office of Economic Development, which is a secretary. The other expenditure category is increased by $120,323.82 from $17,974,986.18 in 2015 to $18,095,310 in 2016. Our major increase under this expenditure category is group health insurance, which increased by $615,654. And the major decrease under this expenditure category, as you see every year, is in state and federal grants, $294,519. Go to the next slide. Municipal debt service expenditure category has increased $722,899 from $5,182,993 in 2015 to $5,905,892 in 2016. And this increase is the result of the amortization of previously issued bonds, including the recently issued bonds for the 2015 Energy Savings Improvement Program, or ESIP. The statutory expenditure category increased by $194,801. The major increases under this expenditure category include police and firemen's retirement, which is up $135,417, public employee retirement system, which is up $33,674, and Social Security, $25,709. Moving into the deferred charges expenditure category, increased by $136,028, which is 29.16%, from $466,527 in 2015 to $602,555 in 2016. And this expenditure category includes 1/5 of the emergency appropriation approved by the Township Council in 2012 for recovery efforts associated with the Superstorm Sandy, and also funding to cover deficit in Arena Utility and Animal Control Trust. The Capital Improvement Fund expenditure category has not changed in 2016. Our proposed capital budget for 2016 is $3,994,500 for curbing, drainage, facilities, and road improvements, and replacement equipment and vehicles for various departments and divisions. And finally, the reserve for uncollected taxes expenditure category increased by $30,000 from $1,820,000 in 2015 to $1,850,000 in 2016. That's a statutory non-spending appropriation. The actual tax collection rate for, excuse me, 2015 was 99.79%. The projected tax collection rate for 2016, 98.86%. This next slide breaks down the expenditure categories. This year, you're going to see very similar breakdown percentage-wise to last year's. You are up in municipal debt service at 11%, and we'll talk about that in subsequent slide presentation. This was a more detailed breakdown. We call this the Sherwin-Williams paint slide, breakdown of expenditures by category. If you look at the big pieces of the pie, debt service, again, 11%. Public safety, our largest expenditure, $13,044,049, which is at 24%. And insurances, which cost quite a bit. Insurance, $10,235,385, which is around 19% of the budget. So again, these categories didn't change much over last year, but you do see where a bulk of the township funds are spent. 2016 revenues. Total municipal revenue has increased by $1,157,669.82 from $50,700,748.18 in 2015 to $51,858,418 in 2016. Our municipal state aid revenue category, unfortunately, has not been changed for 2016. Fund balance revenue category has been increased by $250,000 for 2016. Our fund balance reserve has been set at 4.72% of our total municipal budget for 2016, compared at 4.50% in 2015. Our uniform construction code feed revenue category has been increased by $75,000 from $1,550,000 in 2015 to $1,625,000 for 2016. Municipal court fines and costs has been decreased by $25,000. That was $500,000 last year, and we've moved that down to $475,000 for 2016. The interest on investment deposits revenue category has been increased ever so slightly by $5,000, and that's going to be plus 7.14% for 2016. Miscellaneous revenues have been increased by $243,335.82 for 2016, which includes the accumulated premium on bonds and notes and the capital contribution from the Old Bridge Public Library for our roof replacement project under the ESIP. Receipts for delinquent tax revenue category has not changed for 2016, and the amount to be raised by taxation has increased by $609,334 from $32,419,526 in 2015 to $33,028,860 for 2016. Similar to the breakdown for the expenditures are revenues. The big, again, unfortunately, the big revenue generator amount to be raised by taxation at 61%. That's a big part of the Pac-Man, looking up into the other pieces. Also municipal state aid at 12%. And again, we have a number of discussions which we'll break down in a minute for fund balance, which is $6,750,000 or 12%. As I mentioned earlier, this is a further kind of drilling down into our revenues. Municipal state aid, that's a telling tale. It's been flat since 2011 at $6,270,857. This is the energy receipts and the Comptra. And actually, we're only getting 20 to 25% of what the township should be getting, as other municipalities have struggled with this exact same issue. It doesn't even keep up with the consumer price index. So that's something that's a statewide issue. Our fund balance surplus, if you can see, in 2011, we kept it flat for 2-year increments. 2012 and 2013, we raised it by, I think, $250,000 for 14 and 15. And again, based on the surplus fund balance, which I'll talk about in a minute, we moved it to $6,750,000 for 16. This is the more detailed breakdown of fund balance, is what fund balance is. If you can go back to 2011, you can see our fund balance is our fund balance for 2016 at $9,310,866. We carry that over from 2015 into January 1st, 2016. We used $6,750,000 in the budget, as indicated in the previous slide, leaving us a cash fund balance of $2,560,866 for 2016. This is what's one of the driving factors on what our bond rating increase was. Ratings agencies want to see an increase, and better interest rates will result. We did move to a AA1 this last year in 2015, which means lower risk from creditor perspective. If you also look from 2011, you look at a breakdown, fund balance to budget rate ratio is 11.89%. In 2016, if you look at a fund balance to budget ratio, we're at 16.61%. So you can see gradual increases, those purple lines for the cash fund balance, as well as the increase in the fund balance. Uniform construction code fees for 2011 to 2016, we did increase them to $1,625,000. Municipal court fines and costs. You can see a number of spikes. We talked about that in a little more detail over the last couple of years. We did reduce that to $475,000. Next slide illustrates the decrease in court fines and costs over time, going back to 2011 when we were up to $1.8 million in fines and court fines and costs, and the gradual decrease. That's something we will keep our eye on. You'll see that again next year. Interest on investments and deposits. Most towns have eliminated this as a separate revenue category. We did increase briefly, as I stated before, to $75,000 from $70,000 in 2015. Miscellaneous revenues. Again, this year, 2016, at $3,603,701, up from $3,360,365. This includes licenses and fees, interest costs on taxes, recreation fees, pilots, franchise fees, tower rental fees, and interlocal services. Receipts from delinquent taxes, again, has not changed since 2011, $30,000 straight across the board, and the same in 2016. And finally, the amount to be raised by taxation, 2011 to 2016, for the municipal library tax levy, you'll see increase from $34,737,046 to $35,462,592. Statutory caps. Our cost of living cap adjustment, which is enacted by the state, requires each municipality to limit the local government unit's final budget appropriation to no more than 3.5% with the adoption of a cost of living index or cap index ordinance. For Old Bridge Township, the proposed final budget appropriation for 2016 is $42,198,427, which is $780,632.92 below the state mandated cap base. From the property tax levy cap, enacted by the state, requires each municipality to limit the local government's amount to be raised by taxation to no more than 2% over the prior year's levy. The state allows specific exceptions for health insurance, specific exemptions for health insurance, health benefits, pensions, length of service awards program for volunteers, capital improvements, and debt service. For Old Bridge Township, our proposed municipal tax levy for 2016 is $33,020,860, which is $806,688 below the state mandated property tax levy cap. So using my quick H.G. Wells picture, we'll take a trip back through time. If we can go to the next slide for our fiscal health fact check, 2016 versus 2011. As we indicated earlier, total appropriations or expenditures for 2016 are lower than total appropriations for 2011 by $1,755,163, or 3.13%. Our non-recurring revenues are lower than non-recurring revenues for 2011 by $5,160,000. This year, our $400,000 is a non-recurring revenue, but it's not a one-shot revenue, and it has to do with the debt service offset, which we'll talk about in a couple of minutes. Our fund balance is higher, as I indicated from that elaborate chart, by $1,679,186, or 190.45%. And finally, our municipal portion of real estate taxes has been stabilized, and our annual increase is limited to 1.37% from 2011 to present 2016. We wanted to also show, these are slides you had seen back in 2014 regarding our bond rating and rationale. As you know, we had a AA2 rating, Township Old Bridge, 3.9 million general obligation refunding bonds. And at the time when we did come into office, we talked about what would drive the rating up, material improvement in reserves and cash position, and significant growth in the township's tax base. And again, the other flag that we were dealing with was what could drive ratings down, which would be further declines in current fund reserve levels and deterioration of our township's tax base and wealth indicators. So through a lot of work and a lot of long meetings and long nights, mayor, council, and everybody, 2014, we got a Moody's revised our outlook to positive, and we were assigned a AA2 to our $9.8 million in general obligation bonds series 2014. Again, improving current reserves were expected to remain strong, and it also talked about the rationale was for strong financial management, below average debt burden. The positive outlook reflected the belief that the township's financial position would continue to improve without reliance on one-time revenues due to strong management, conservative budget assumptions, and comprehensive financial planning. That brings us to 2014, where Moody's upgraded us to from a AA2 to a AA1, and assigned us a new rating to the Township of Old Bridge's $3.7 million Energy Savings Improvement Bonds Series 2015. The AA1 reflects the township's large tax base, above average wealth indicators, and strong financial position. The balance sheet gains were caused primarily by conservative budgeting. Notably, the township had significantly reduced its reliance on one-time revenues. And if you look, just the benefit of what the financial planning has been, if you go back to our $9.8 million in general obligation bonds for 2014, we had a rate of 1.81%. Flash forward to 2015, in our ESIP bonds, we were at 2.79%, but that was for 20 years. So the future, according to our Magic 8 Ball, our potential challenge national, state, local economic conditions, like everybody else in New Jersey, we're concerned at what goes on nationally and the impact on our local economic condition. Weather-related emergencies and related costs have been really a huge factor here in Old Bridge over the last 4 years. From Superstorm Sandy to snow and ice, it really seems that we've absorbed a lot of costs associated with weather-related events. Additional contractual cost increases from insurance, pensions and utilities, and those types of costs have been significant challenges and will continue to be. Collective bargaining agreements and related negotiations. We did settle all contracts over the last couple of years, and now contracts are up again for negotiation. So that's something that we'll be looking toward in the next couple of years at least. Accumulated time payout for retirees, that's something that we keep an eye on, and we see that one line item in the budget that we do budget for accumulated time payouts. Increasing number of tax appeals is always a consideration. New and unfunded state mandates, unfortunately, is always a consideration. And one of the things I am very hopeful that won't happen, further cuts to municipal aid, which has remained flat, and we did not get what we were supposed to, I'm going to say over the last 10 years at least. Potential opportunities, I am an optimist at times. Ongoing cost containment strategies, as you know, the council and mayor, we have been working very diligently on containment when we talk about negotiations, especially in the area of healthcare, and that is something we had moved all employees to an EPO plan through negotiations, mediation, and arbitration. That's something that we still need to further investigate other opportunities because of the large increase in costs, and it's also based on experience. And that's something that we're going to go again to market this next year coming up. In regards to cooperative, competitive contracting for services, we've had good successes building out electric generation, not only for the residential community, but we were doing the reverse online auction for our electric for the last couple of years at some substantial savings. So we'll continue to look to opportunities for competitive contracting. Cooperative purchasing for goods and services, that's something we talk about every January when we put the resolutions on. We look for multiple sources for pricing, from county co-ops, from state co-ops. We also go out to bid or get competitive quotes depending on each purchase. So our finance department does an excellent job of sourcing and looking for the best bang for the best buck that we can put out there. New technology-related initiatives. I know when Mr. Reardon came to speak before council, we talked a lot about Gov Online, our e-track system, and looking to do more with technology to make sure that we're containing or reducing costs and increasing efficiency, and that will continue on into this year. Federal, state, and local grant programs. We do have share a grant writer with the school district. We also have been aggressive in pursuing grants through the municipal aid program. Unfortunately, that money is drying up. But other opportunities for the next year, we'll be looking to other state and local grant programs as well as other organizations. Finally, additional or enhanced shared services with our Old Bridge Public Library, Old Bridge Public Schools, Middlesex County Government, or neighboring municipalities. We currently, as the budget subcommittees, you met folks from the health services from Middlesex County, our recycling contract for the Middlesex County Improvement Authority, our school security program through our Old Bridge School District. I'm always on the lookout and working with our neighbors for potential shared services. And again, we had talked one time doing animal control or other things that we'll start to talk about maybe going into this year. And finally, not listed on there, new businesses and new ratables. We've had a concerted effort with our Office of Economic Development that the mayor had brought into his office, as well as the reestablishment of a redevelopment agency. So that's something that's hot topics, I guess, in every municipality. That's something we'll be looking to do, continue to invest in over the next year. So that brings us to tonight, our municipal budget adoption, Monday, March 21st, 2016. What we'd like to do at this time, Council President, is we can answer questions from council, and we can go to the questions from the public, and again, we're available to answer.
Mr. Allison, want to say anything? Or?
Well, I just like to say that the one thing that I'd like to mention, I met with the finance committee before. As I said, I could count on one finger the amount of clients that we have whose bond rating has increased twice over the past few years, and so that's very good. It's very good to have your have your fund balance at a level that Moody's now considers to be strong, You kind of move from weak to moderate, and now you're entering into the strong category. And that's good, and that's why when you do go to bond, you see that you have some very favorable rates. So I would recommend you continue that.
We'll go to council. Any questions for the administration on the budget? Oh, Mr. Butler? Sorry, I couldn't see it.
Yeah. Mr. Allison, has the bond rating agencies changed the way they give the township a bond rating? Oh, okay. So Old Bridge right now is, what's our bond rating? I see that 2. I'm not sure what that means. All right, so we're double A1? Okay. Okay, now, I know normally, Ms. Allison, they ask us to increase our surplus. Now, does that money come from the fund balance, or where does that money come from?
Well, it is the fund balance. The fund balance
Okay, so,
is at December 31st, at the end of the year.
right,
They will analyze your balance sheet, and they will look at to see what your fund balance is as a relationship to your budget. And
determination at that point,
that's one of the criteria that they use, along with many other criterias, ratables in town, net worth of individuals, growth, things like that. But as you saw on the slides, one of the things that they were looking for over the years was to increase reserves. It's really reserves is what it is.
okay, you said that's one of the things they look at. What are the other things that they look at, Ms. Allison?
They look at the ratables at the town. They look at the mix of the ratables, residential versus business. They look at fiscal management. They look at management. They look for political continuity. They look for things that give them comfort, calmness, a trend toward the good versus a trend toward the bad. All those things.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Allison.
No, Council
Please.
President. Look, Reggie, one of the things when we talked about the fund balance analysis, basically there was that argument going back a few years of where did that surplus go? That fund balance carries over that next year. What the chart clearly we tried to do, and it took us a couple of charts, a couple of years to get it the right way. If you look on that blue column, that's what you have as of January 1st. The amount in the red column is what you use in the budget, leaving that little purple column right down there as the cash fund balance. And each year, we made a concerted effort to try to make sure that we left, you see that in 2 years, we used the same amount of fund balance in each budget until we saw that there was an increase in the overall fund balance at the end of the year, that we were able then to say, you know what, we've gone every 2 years, we've gone up about $250,000. So that's how we kind of increased it, and that's a very conservative way to go. But if you put it in perspective, if you have that to balance the budget, that $2,560,000, my eyes are going on me, that little purple at the end of 2016 is maybe one payroll. So we went from $800 and some thousand dollars to $2 million, and we've been able to do that in such a way that we're making sure that the township has money available should the conditions change, because that's one of the things that in places where people, I think Old Bridge got in trouble before, where you had to fill those gaps with you do land sales, whatever you would do. So at this point now, we're really trying to plan for that future. The mayor made it his point. We need to be sustainable and to come back with, we're very conservative, but again, it's paid off in higher bond rating.
Okay, thank you very much for the explanation. I appreciate it.
Anybody else from council want to be heard on the budget? Mrs. Panos?
In the notes I took, which you took the words right out of my mouth, Mr. Marion, because this fund balance versus the surplus, if anybody paid attention to the payroll tonight, back in 2011, we wouldn't have been able to cover payroll with the fund balance left over. Back in 2011, it was 881,000. Tonight's payroll, that's how far we've come. That we can meet payroll in a state of an emergency. We can meet 3 payrolls. I find that very, very commendable. And I'm sure all the employees of the township have a sigh of relief for that one. So that is a fund balance versus, Mr. Allison, a fund balance versus surplus is in case you have an emergency. You know, it could be, you know, is that true? Am I bringing that down?
Up with at the end of the year, okay? What you put into your budget is some of that fund balance to balance your following year's budget. So if you were to spend your appropriations right to the limit, and if you were to only realize the revenues that you predicted, and then some emergency happened, what would be left would be that smaller purple number.
Okay, I understood that.
But from year to year, you've been able to regenerate that surplus each budget year, because a budget's a budget, it's not an actual. So what happens at the end of the year? Have we made money? Have we lost money? And through the years, you've been able to replenish that surplus and add to it, and grow to the point that now you're at a position which, at least in Moody's eyes, would be considered to have a, you know, just into the strong category of having, you know.
Or just in the regular people's eyes, I like to have a little bit in my bank in case of an emergency in my house. Okay, the municipal court fines, they went down. What would cause that to go down? Ticketing or what?
Go back into 2011, 2012, there was an aggressive driving program in place through budgeted overtime, or scheduled overtime, and then partial grants. So over time, we did reduce that program, and then we did see a decline in ticket, court fines, and costs. But we did try to plan for that. If you could see the actual versus what the budget was, we did try to plan and anticipate that.
What's an example of a non-recurring revenue?
I mentioned that debt service officer.
Well, the non-recurring revenue is revenues that you receive that don't recur every year. There's also different types of non-recurring revenues. Some are laid in your lap, let's say, and some are something which is orchestrated. So I'll compare 2 things. One is, in this particular budget, you have something called, what do you call it, the premium? Is reserved for debt service. That's a non-recurring revenue. It may occur when you sell bonds, and you generate revenue. Now, how does that happen? If you sell bonds and the purchaser of the bond says, instead of giving you an interest rate of 1.7, we're going to give you an interest rate of 1.8, but we're going to give you $400,000. And when you do all the analysis and calculations, it works out that it's a net it's a 1.7 rating. So that's money that you were just handed. So that's a non-recurring revenue which you didn't generate yourself. That money should go toward offsetting debt service, which I believe is what you're doing now. A non-recurring revenue which you would generate yourself would be something along the lines of selling property, selling land, being proactive in bringing in something which is unusual and extraordinary, that you would not have received if you didn't take action yourself.
So in other words, this administration has a little bit of non-recurring revenue. We don't depend on it. I just want to
No.
make that comparison. We are like $5 million less than non-recurring revenue than in 2011 because we didn't sell property to meet the the fund balance of a payroll. We have come, I don't know if the average person out there can understand this. We have come so far. We don't depend on non-recurring revenues for one-shot deals, selling land, and we have enough money to meet payroll without doing that. Those are big things in this town. Plus, we increased your services. I mean, we all, Thank you. And the bond rating. No, you can say that. Yeah, but we've come a long way, and I would hope that the public understands that.
Any other comments? on the
Sure.
budget?
Sure.
Mr. Rosencrantz.
To follow up on what Mrs. Panos said, with all the efforts and time that went into this budget and the result, 2 bond rating improvements over the last year, which at the end of the day saves the township money on interest expenses, is phenomenal. So thank the administration, the department heads who worked so hard to present this budget and get it all together.
Anybody else from council want to be heard on the budget? I'll just close by saying that I'm very proud to support this budget. I know the work that went into it. I was at all 3 budget subcommittee meetings, went through the budget line by line by line. I think everywhere we could save a penny, we did, while balancing the needs of the public and providing the services we need, particularly in the capital side of it. So I'll be supporting the budget. I'll close the council piece of it, and I'm going to go to the public now. Anybody from the public want to be heard on the budget? Yes, sir. Please identify yourself for the record.
Mark Rizzoli, Ward 4. Councilman Rosencrantz, you just spoke about saving the taxpayers' money. Right. Well, let's go to today. Your job offers you health benefits. You take benefits from the town at about $30,000.
This is on the budget. This is on the budget. Stay
is
on.
on the budget.
No. Time out. No.
Why do you
Stay
always
on-
interrupt people?
Stay
I'm here to
on the
praise you,
budget.
you don't
This is
interrupt.
about the budget.
And I am speaking about
No.
the budget.
You're attacking the council person.
Just made a remark about saving the town money. He's costing
You can
the town
comment
money.
anything you want on the budget, please. You want to talk about the budget?
Okay.
Thank you.
That is on a budget. That's part of the budget.
Talk about the budget.
Okay, you want to talk about a decline in revenue in municipal court? That's because we have less cops. Councilwoman Panos, you talked about increasing services. Can you just enlighten us? What services have you increased for the taxpayers? Thank you.
Roads and curbs have been done. They haven't been done in years prior to this administration. And I'm not sure about that. We have more police on the street and less on top. Have you had your, roads and services off the top of my head? We have more programs in this town for our children. The code enforcement is now electronically done. Recreation is now electronically done. Is there something else that you would like to see done, sir?
No.
Okay.
No, don't engage. Anybody else from the public? I saw her. Yes, please.
Dublin to 1 Yorkshire Court and Society Hill. Did Moody's have a comment on municipal salary, overtime, and benefits? And if they did they think they were excessive?
The answer was no for the public. Anybody else from the public want to be heard on the budget? Yes, please. Anybody else from the public want to be heard on the budget? I will close the public portion of the budget. Okay, first, before we go to budget adoption, we have to actually go to the ordinance number 1 for second reading. We have to hopefully pass ordinance number 2016-03 to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank, NJSA 40A:40-45.14 for the current year 2016. Can I have a motion, please?
I'd like to make a motion.
Moved by Mr. Green,
Second.
second by Mr. Rosencrantz. Any questions, comments about ordinance number 1 from the council? Seeing and hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Butler?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Anybody from the public want to be heard on ordinance number 1 for second reading? Apologize. I'll close the public portion.
Mr. Butler?
Thank you.
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg? Green? Yes. Mr. Mahler?
Yes.
Mrs. Panos?
Yes.
Mr. Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar? Mrs. Walker? President Kale?
Yes.
9 yes.
Okay, now we'll go back up to the budget. This is for budget adoption.
Just so the record's clear.
Yes.
The roll call that we just had was for adoption of the cap ordinance. Right, I just want to make sure that so the record's clear.
Yep, sorry about that.
Thank you, that's okay.
Thought it was. Budget adoption, can I have a motion, please?
I'll
By
second.
Mr. Green, seconded by Mr. Rosencrantz. Any other council comments before we vote? Seeing none, hearing none, roll call, please.
Mr. Butler?
No.
Dr. Greenberg?
I'm voting no, and the reason why is, although I think we've made great strides, not using non-recurring revenues, having a strong fund balance, which is essential to the security of the town, I do feel with deeper review of the budget, additional areas can be saved. And I say this because I feel we are in an era where people are being taxed out of their homes. And if we look at this, that we spend less, and I applaud you for doing that and improving services, I think the tax has to go down in that direction also. I've been told it's been in other entities when it's a small amount to just absorb it. And that comes with a negative impact also. But in this time, especially, we have to be very vigilant, and we have to be aware now also and be good stewards in this town, which I think have made great strides. But also I want this to go out to the Board of Ed, because we're, as the township, I'm saying this for the township as a whole, we're facing also on the Board of Ed a 3.5% increase, and I hope they do as good a job as this township has done. And in lieu of that tax increase, which I hope they listen to this and they do not increase his taxes, and by saying that, I say that's why I have to vote no for this budget also, for not a tax increase. Thank you.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mahler?
Yes.
Panos?
Yes.
Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Sohar? Mrs. Walker? President Kane?
Before I vote yes, I just want to comment that, again, I think this was a tremendous budget. I was at all 3 budget meetings. I didn't hear one offering of any advice as to reduce the budget. And I think it's a little inappropriate to grandstand at a budget meeting when you haven't offered anything up as a solution. I'm going to vote yes.
Thank you again, Mr. Cahill. There's no grandstanding.
I'm voting yes. Okay, capital budget presentation.
Hey, good evening, council. It's your business administrator again. I'd like to go to the capital budget presentation. Everybody has the time to pull out your capital budget presentations. Everybody have it? Mr. Shaw, we ready? All right, the Township Capital Improvement Program General Overview. A capital improvement program is a multi-year plan and schedule for capital projects. Capital projects have a prospective useful life of 5 years or more, and capital projects have a cumulative annual cost of $25,000. Capital projects include the acquisition and/or development of land, the acquisition of major equipment and personal property, the acquisition, construction, improvement, and/or renovations of buildings, roads, and utilities and other structures, improvements of public works, and any other matter described by state statute regarding the financing of public sources. The annual capital budget is prepared and adopted in conjunction with our annual operating budget. Administrative preparation of our annual capital budget includes a rigorous review of each departmental project request in terms of need, justification, scheduling, cost, effects on operating budget, method of financing, and the impact on the municipal debt structure. Our capital budget does not directly appropriate funds. The appropriation of funds is made part of the capital improvement section of the budget by the adoption of a bond ordinance. So our capital improvement planning and budgeting goals are very similar to our budgeting goals. In this case, we continue to develop a comprehensive 6-year capital program on an annual basis that supports township goals and objectives for equipment, facilities, infrastructure, and technology. Our second goal is to continue to develop and implement a management system for prioritizing, tracking, and reporting on capital projects to ensure timely acquisition and/or completion, maximize utilization of grants and aid to offset capital costs and related debt service, as I mentioned during the other presentation, and to minimize the property tax impact of capital projects and related debt service through sound financial planning and balancing debt repayment schedules. Just very briefly, if you can walk through our capital budget, and in your packets, I would ask that you take some time to go through and look. in more detail in your free time. But basically what we came into in 2012, I think there was no capital projects at all in 2011. And what we really tried to do in 2012 was to get some type of a capital program established. Total amount authorized at that time, $2,523,000. And you can see that listing projects on page 8 of your presentation. But basically trying to get back to curbing improvements, drainage improvements, equipment, badly needed equipment, facilities improvements down to overhead garage doors, because that's what we had a lot of problems with our facilities. And then again, going back to our road resurfacing program at various locations, including Cindy Street and Ferry Road. And I mentioned vehicles. 2013, we got a better handle on our capital budget. We went up to $2.9 million for, again, similar types of improvements. Again, ongoing curbing and drainage improvements and trying to get ourselves caught up, setting priorities, doing real evaluations of roadways and areas that are needed for improvement. Some parks improvements, road improvements, resurfacing, but our main projects were road and curbing and drainage. In 2014, after a lot of analysis and working with the different departments, we had our largest capital expenditures in a series of not only the capital bond ordinance annual, also in separate bond ordinances. Total amount authorized for 2014, $13,583,000. And that was to go toward, again, our regular curbing, drainage, and road resurfacing. But also we had passed a separate bond ordinance for our police radio communication system, as well as for the energy savings improvement program, which were done as a separate bond ordinance and a non-conforming bond ordinance respectively. 2015, we increased our annual allotment to $4,414,000 for trying to get our roads and our drainage and our curbing caught up from prior years, really with a better system in place with the addition of our Director of Community Development Township Engineer, as well as our Director of Public Works, of getting some in-house stuff done, but also really coming up with a real program and a plan for the resurfacing and reconstruction of roads that were badly needed. And I think everybody would agree here, although maybe not, that we would have, it's been a successful capital program for roadways and other infrastructure improvements. So that brings us to 2016. And if you go back, the one column I would look at with regards to each of those others, if you look at the specific projects, but also look that one of the big things we did in 2013 or 2014 was canceled authorizations going back almost a decade or more of monies that were authorized, some financed but never spent. So we had projects that were in limbo. We went back and recaptured some of those projects, including the West Avenue Drainage Project, as well as a couple other different projects, and then canceled out any remaining unauthorized debt. In regards to 2016, what I'd like to do is just briefly go through what our capital budget projects are by category. For curbing improvements, we have $450,000, drainage, $580,000, equipment, $528,000, facilities improvements, $325,000, parks improvements, $65,000, roadway improvements under our annual resurfacing and state aid, $1,557,500, traffic signal improvements, $52,500, vehicles and related equipment, $380,000. Our curbing improvements are our annual curbing plan. Drainage improvements, we had resurrected last year an annual drainage improvement program. Also the Furman Boulevard stabilization. Under equipment, we're looking for a phone system replacement, a spreader sprayer, the replacement of our 911 PSAP answering system, which is now needs to be replaced by the end of this year. Asphalt soft fuel system replacement, plasma cutter and trailer for the Departments of Public Works. Under the facilities improvements, if you recall the Civic Center retaining wall, we initially were going to repair that project through the CDBG grant program, and we had to pull that out because there were certain issues that we had to address, and it was also came in over what the bid was. We had to include that construction piece under our 2016 capital budget. Master plan, we're going to have ongoing discussions regarding the Jake Brown Road extension. Parks improvements, the tennis backboards and Upper Dyke Park restrooms. Road improvements, pedestrian safety improvement at New Jersey State Highway Route 9 and Old Mill Road. Traffic signal at Route 34 and Amboy Road, and the pro rata contribution study and annual road resurfacing program. Under roadway, commit with those two traffic signal improvements as part of their larger capital improvements for the state that we had to pass the resolution and commit funding for. And finally, vehicles, this budget we're looking for a passenger bus, 2 small pickup vehicles, 1 4-wheel drive vehicle, and as we discussed during the budget subcommittee meetings for recreation, public works, a utility bucket truck that could be used by various departments. I'm now going to turn it over to my friend, Mr. Shah, regarding the capital funding process, and then we'll be able to take questions from council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The capital funding process, it's good to have that overview so that everybody understands how ultimately it results in the budget under the debt service. So as every year tonight, when you adopt the multi-purpose capital bond ordinance, you authorize, in the ordinance, you authorize a chief financial officer to issue notes, temporary financing, which is the issuance of short-term notes. They are annually renewed at the maturity date of every year. We generally try to pay off part of that notes every year. There's a section in the budget that covers that, and we continue to renew those bond anticipation notes over 2, 3, or 4 years, depending on the prior amortization schedule. And ultimately, those short-term notes converts into the bond. So, other than a special project like ESIP, we generally have this process of financing the debt. And you'll see in the next chart, in the next couple of charts, how that plays. What we try to do is make sure that our budget can properly absorbs this debt service cost in the budget without tremendously impacting the budget. And ultimately, those bonds are issued. We try to maintain the issuance short, 10 years, less than $10 million if possible, which is under the IRS statutes considered bank qualified, and it obviously generates a better interest rate when it's short term. The goal is here, and one of the criteria that Moody's looks at it is your budget amortizations in your budget is about between 10 and 15% of your total budget. When it goes in excess, then they are concerned about it. And so currently we are at 10%, which is at the bottom of that chart, and so that helps us over the rating rate also. We do have, as we said, twice in the last 2 years, we have got a rating upgrade. We are AA1, which is basically a 1 notch below the AAA rating. So we are, our rating is very, very good. Our debt is desired by the investor community, and that helps keep the rate lower. As Mr. Marion indicated, in 2014, we achieved 1.81% over 10 years. That was almost like a AAA rating, according to our auditor when he told us that. And last year, when we issued ESIP bonds, that under the statute required to be 20 years bond, because it has supposed to be offset by the reductions in the cost. It's supposed to be budget neutral. So there were 20 years bond, but we still received 2.79% interest rate, which is very significantly low interest rate compared to what was projected when we were doing the ESIP calculation. They were looking at 3.5%, 4% to 5% rate, and we had borrowed the same, for the same purpose at 2.79. So, I think we did very well with those. And so that's, those are the criteria we use in developing our borrowing plan. You can see here our annual bond amortization, which covers all the bond issues. It also includes our long-term trust loans, and also we have a Green Acres loans that are very low interest loan. Those two are included in that. And you can see right now our total debt, including interest, is almost $6 million. In 2018, our debt will, payment will go down to roughly $2.5 million. And the goal is in 2017, will be issuing another debt that will fill in so that the budget impact remains limited over the life of this amortization. This basically a graph showing our current outstanding debt. And we're recommending the adoption of the 2016 capital ordinance as presented.
Okay. I'll go to the council before we go to the public. Anybody have any comments from the council on the capital presentation? There is a second reading ordinance which we have to pass. Well, we have to discuss tonight and potentially pass ordinance number 2. Does anybody from the council want to speak on this? Okay. I'll go to the public. Anybody want to be heard on this presentation on the capital? I'll close the public portion. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. We're going to go to ordinance for second reading, ordinance number 2. Ordinance number 2016-04, bond ordinance providing an appropriation of $3,994,500 for various improvements in and by the Township of Old Bridge in the County of Middlesex, New Jersey, and authorizing the issuance of $3,794,600 bonds or notes of the Township of financing part of the appropriation. Can I have a motion, please? Moved by Mr. Green.
Second.
Second by Mr. Miles. Public comment on ordinance number 2. Yes, sir. Name and address, please, for the record.
George Millett, Shoreline Circle.
Thank you.
First wanted to ask, this current bond, is that included in the February 22nd budget listing or not?
Yeah.
You're passing an ordinance for an additional $3,700,000 and some in bonds and notes. Is that included in what was listed as the 2006 budget?
The budget includes the annual amortization payment from, as I indicated, the $6 million that I presented in the slides. But the current bond authorization will not come into the payments will not come in the later years once we start borrowing funds. The mayor of authorization does not mean it's immediately spent. We'll develop the spending plan and then we'll develop financing plan. And once we finance that, then we'll come into the budget. So it will be coming into the future year's budget.
Right, but my question is, you had $25.7 million listed as debt for the township. Is this $3.7 million going to add to that figure or not?
You will add to that figure, yes.
Okay, good.
But
Now
it will
my-
also subtract what we pay
Right, you're gonna
annually.
pay off, yeah.
We pay over $5 million. So it will adjust according to our payments of principal payments that's in the budget, and then it will add the additional authorization.
Right, so my question is it good business practice that with only $34 million in property tax revenues, you now have $29 million in debt? That sort of says to me it's like 80% of all of the money I have has to go to pay for my credit cards. It doesn't seem to be a good fiscal practice to have that large amount of debt and not be paying it down. Okay? Thank you.
Well, somebody needs to answer that.
I'll
Yeah.
quickly go and then.
Yeah.
and
Let
then
Mr.
Bob
Shire
will
answer
go.
that for the record, please.
But I think that if you look at it, the debt ratios, and according to the state, our debt ratios is based on our total
Back
township
closer, Margie, so
township
people can hear you.
assets, which is roughly, and we have to file a certification to that effect, and we are about 0.8% of our net assets. So I think when you compare that to the assets, I think we're really very good compared to many municipality exceeds those limits, that 3.5% limit that state sets. So I think it's reasonable, and I think I'll let Bob go over about the debt part of it.
Well, I mean, I think what you just said about what the state allows I think we're at 20% of what the state allows as far as total debt. And you can't mix liabilities with income. It's very similar to a mortgage on a house. So if you have a house that has a $500,000 mortgage and your income is $75,000 or $100,000, it's just a part of your income that is going to pay off something which has a 30-year life. These debts are paid off over, probably on average 15 years. Some are 10, some are 20. So to mix debt versus taxes is really a red herring.
How do you plan to pay the debt off if we don't mix taxes with the debt?
Because as I just said, right now you have $28 million, $25 million in debt, right? In the next 2 years, you'll be paying off about $5 million a year, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in those 2 years, you're going to add maybe another $3,000 or $4,000 or $7,000, depending on what comes up next year. So it's just replacing itself, and will eventually go down. But basically, it's going to replace itself, and the town's I would say plan is to, as Himanshu said, to keep it around 10% of the budget. So the debt service will not be more than 10% of the budget or thereabouts. So as long as you stay at that level, you won't have a structurally imbalanced budget.
All right, thank you for your answer.
Couple more comments?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The important thing to recognize is that if you don't use the mechanism that is offered, that means you have to do all your capital projects, maintenance and infrastructure improvement right within the budget. So you need $4 million added to this budget.
Right.
That would have a tremendous impact. And the second thing I want to point out, that I think that we have explained our process, what we have said to the rating agency, and Moody's has really recognized our process. And because we keep below 10% or around 10%, that's why we have very strong ratings.
I just want to wrap it up on a couple of items.
Yeah, because we still have to go to the public too, so.
Just, I think
yeah.
it's important.
Around that item? Yeah,
As
okay,
as far as sound business practice, I think that this is an investment in the community, whether it's roads, drainage, and infrastructure. I think that the equipment that you want your employees to be able to utilize, to be able to perform some things in-house. We've taken very conservative steps to get a handle on a capital budget that's meaningful for the township. If you go back to prior years, and I go back 10 years, and you watch that money and authorization hang in there with no plan to ever do anything with it. To be able to cancel that, move forward, and then work with your department heads and your employees to come up with an investment in the community, roads, infrastructure, and everything else. You can't say that's poor business practice. That's the right business practice. So I take exception to that comment.
Right.
And also,
I think
Council,
we all
one of the
do.
most important things we have to do is invest in our community. The average home increase in value in Old Bridge about $20,000 last year. And that's because there are so many new roads, so many new curbs. Our township employees can now perform their function with the new equipment. We get the job done quicker, saving money.
Right.
And I'm a big believer in investment. We need to take advantage of today's financial market.
Right.
We'd be remiss in our duties if we did not invest in this town. And the thinking there would be to wait till we saved enough money to do a capital project.
Right.
We'd be doing a capital project one every 4 years.
Right.
So,
And our bond rating is such that our interest rate is, de minimis, so.
the financial institutions like towns that spend money, that
Right.
puts money back into the economy, and
Right.
That's what it's all about.
We'll go back to the public. Anybody want to be heard in this particular capital bond ordinance? Close the public portion. Have a motion? Yeah, oh, we do? Okay, cool. Roll call, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg? Mr. Green? Mr. Mollis?
Yes.
Mrs. Panos?
Yes.
Mr. Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar? Mrs. Walker? President Kale?
Yes.
9 yes.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Preliminary public comments to the council, subject to the following conditions and restrictions. 1, during the preliminary public portion of the meeting, any person may address the township council on one subject for a maximum period of 5 minutes. Any such person desiring to speak during the preliminary public portion shall first sign a list maintained by the township clerk for such purpose. Comments during the preliminary public comment portion of the meeting shall not encompass second reading ordinances or any other matter for which comment or public hearing is to occur at this meeting.
Mark Rizzoli?
Good evening, Mark Rizzoli, Ward 4 resident. I'd just like to say I heard a lot of comments about good government. Good government doesn't end at a budget presentation. Also, how residents are treated when they come here to ask questions, how fellow council people are treated when they object to something. I came to a council meeting about the MUA as a ratepayer and a taxpayer. I should not be subjected to being cursed at. And if people want to deny that, I suggest we poll the council. Maybe someone heard it. Okay, and to waste council time in discussing about assigned seating is the most ridiculous thing. I believe this Old Bridge government is 70+ years old. What has changed when you need assigned seating? Just shows a lack of professionalism. And one thing about grandstanding, when you sit here and pat yourself on the back when you're raising people's taxes, that's what I call grandstanding.
Faith
Mucho gusto.
Portugoso?
Hi. That's it. I'll close the public portion of the meeting. Councilmember comments. Anybody want to be heard? Councilmember comments.
No.
Seeing none, we'll close that. Report of the township clerk.
None at this time, thank you.
Report of the township attorney.
Nothing to report, Mr. President.
We have an administrative report tonight? We do. Okay.
All right, thank you. Very briefly, Mayor and Council, the administrative report for March 21st. The NJDEP Superstorm Sandy Blue Acres team began extending buyout offers to homeowners in Old Bridge in April of 2015. A total of 29 buyout offers have been extended to date, and 24 out of the 29 offers have been accepted. The hard copies of your March 17th NJDEP Old Bridge buyout report have been forwarded to the township clerks for distribution to council, and we'll be working with the office shortly as we get up to that 12 number to talk about potential demolition of properties. Item number 2, on March 14th, the township engineer received notification that NJDOT Central Region Operations has been performing emergency maintenance work on severely deteriorated pavement sections of Route 18 within Old Bridge Township. It is expected that this milling and resurfacing work will be completed by the end of the month. Item 3, Tate Communications has submitted detailed designs for the radio system, internet protocol, network, radio frequency, and bidirectional amplifier for the high school campus, which are now under review by the consultant and Old Bridge Police Department. Tate has also identified a problem with the microwave path to the Garden State Parkway Exit 120 Tower site for the radio communication system, and the township has been in contact with the NJ Turnpike Authority to discuss site improvements or other alternatives. Hard copies of a March 18th project status report from Intertech Associates has been forwarded to the township clerk's office for distribution to council. Item number 4, Mayor Henry would like to recognize and thank Ms. Julia Fragapane, Ms. Adelina Kanka, and the students, families, and staff at the James A. McDivitt Elementary School for their recent donations. In addition to collecting a generous amount of pet supplies, the school-wide Fetch It Forward Community Service Project raised $425 for the Old Bridge Animal Shelter. Just as a reminder, on March 25th, all municipal offices will be closed for business in observance of the Good Friday holiday. Item 6, a reminder that CERT, Community Emergency Response Team Training, is accepting applications. The next CERT class is scheduled to begin on April 4th and will meet every Monday through June 6th. For additional information, residents can contact our Old Bridge Police Department, 732-721-5600, 3610 extension for Lieutenant Greenway. Item 7, on April 5th, Operation Beachhead will be sponsoring another event and lunch at the John Piccolo Ice Arena. Operation Beachhead is a not-for-profit organization that provides recreational activities for disabled veterans, active military personnel, and their families. For additional information about Operation Beachhead, the ice arena, or other upcoming recreation activities, events, and programs, residents can contact our Department of Public Works, Department of Parks and Recreation, sorry. And I think that's the last Operation Beachhead for the season. Item number 8, the contractor under our Township Energy Savings Improvement Program. Our contractor for ECM number 1, Lighting and Lighting Controls, which is Bellicon LLC of East Brunswick, New Jersey, is scheduled to mobilize during the week of April 4th, 2016. I also have a hard copy of that report transmitted to the Township Clerk's Office for distribution. Item 9, the Department of Public Works will begin our first round of leaf collection on April 11th in Ward 1. All leaves should be placed at the curb in biodegradable paper bags. For additional information, residents can contact our Department of Public Works or visit the Township website at oldbridge.com. Item 10, the Old Bridge Business Alliance is actively seeking members to join this dynamic and growing business networking group. Our next Business Alliance meeting is scheduled for April 14th at 6 p.m. at the Grand Marquis. We'll feature the keynote speaker, Lieutenant Governor Guadagno, will be there, and a special guest speaker. For additional information, residents can contact our Mayor's Office of Economic Development or contact the Mayor's Office. Item number 11, on April 20th, our Mayor's Office of Economic Development, in conjunction with the Middlesex County Workforce Development Board, will be hosting a job search resource event between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. in our senior center. Participants will have the opportunity to meet with representatives from various industries and learn about the wide range of county programs and services available to job seekers. For additional information, residents should contact the Mayor's Office of Economic Development, 732-721-5600, extension 7920. Or you can email Mr. Momakis at obedo@oldbridge.com. And finally, just a reminder to Council, April is National Autism Awareness Month. The Township of Old Bridge strongly encourages and supports the promotion of autism awareness and autism acceptance for the tens of thousands of people facing autism diagnosis each year. For additional information, residents can visit the Autism Society website at autism-society.org. And I know there's a number of different organizations within town that will be holding events in conjunction with Autism Awareness Month. So we'll get that to council and put them up on the website as they come in.
Any questions from Mr. Marion about his report? Seeing none, hearing none. Can I have a motion, please, to accept the administrator's report?
Make a motion.
Mr. Mollis made a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Rosencrantz. Roll call, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg? Mr. Green? Mr. Mollis?
Yes.
Mrs. Panos?
Off days.
Mr. Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Sohar? Mrs. Walker? President Cahill?
Yes.
8 yes.
Thank you, Mr. Marion.
All right, Council.
Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. We have items C1 through C11. Could I have a motion, please, to introduce?
I'll move it.
Moved by Mr. Rosencrantz.
Second.
Second by Mr. Mollis. I'll go to the public. Anybody want to be heard on items C1 through C11? I'll close the public portion. Do we have separations for council on C1 through C11? Dr. Greenberg? C4. Any other separations? Seeing none. I have a motion for the balance, please.
Move it.
Moved by Mr. Rosencrantz.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Panos on the balance. Roll call, please.
Mr. Butler? Dr. Greenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Green?
Yes.
Mr. Mollis?
Yes.
Mrs. Panos?
Yes.
Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar? Mrs. Walker? President Cahill?
Yes.
9 yes.
Dr. Greenberg, C4.
Yes, with C4, it's about concerning the Ethics Board. And I see that there was activity with the Ethics Board, and I thought originally that we put up, there was a motion to move the Ethics Board to the, a consideration to move the Ethics Board to the state.
Hold on one second, Dr. Greenberg. Excuse me, can we, you guys are a little loud, so we're just trying to run a meeting. Go ahead.
Yes, originally I said, I see that there has been activity with the Ethics Board dating back in December. And I remember that we had a consideration that to move the Ethics Board to the state based on the fact that there wasn't any activity or quorums or meetings, but I think this bill indicates that that wasn't the case, that it is very active. And so I just want to point that out, that I'm glad that the Ethics Board did stay in town and seeing that, you know, they are doing their due diligence with this.
Just along those lines, Dr. Greenberg, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a Senate bill that actually passed to move all the ethics boards to the state.
Yes, and that's very unfortunate, and when the state realizes, how are they gonna hear every ethics board from the whole state? I think it's a little absurd, and I think that it was a little out of line that they did that, and I think that's made for towns that really don't have an ethics board. When you have a town with 42 square miles, residents and 60,000 people, I don't think that's a good move. And just because the state did it doesn't say that it's a good thing to do. Okay. So that's very unfortunate. And we could review some of the things that were on here. And so I think our local ethics board, if you gave them the chance with the integrity that those members have and the things that they can achieve locally, it's unfortunate if that's the case. Shame on the state.
Anybody else on C4? Mrs.
Yes.
Pownds?
Yes, I'm not so much, I see activity in December, and I'm glad, you know, everybody did their due diligence. However, on the state level, that's a rarity what happened down there. It was unanimous. Democrats, Republicans, they all voted for that. And that is an anomaly, that it's a bipartisan thing. It's not just for towns, it's for counties. There seems to be a lot of issues. Ours was active last month. I'm glad. I'm on the ethics board, so I look forward to serving and, you know, discussing any events. Now I believe this will go to the state assembly, and if you pass unanimously in the Senate, I don't see a problem there. So this might be beyond our control.
Anybody else on C4?
Anyway.
I would like to add to know how the state's gonna fund that and how they're gonna do a good job with the residents of Old Bridge or any other municipality.
Anybody else on C4? Okay.
Do the state budget.
Yes, Mr. Roselli, absolutely.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Just, again, the purpose of this resolution is the fact that the firm charged more than what their contract amount was, so we're authorizing additional money. So the one thing I would ask that when the bills come in, at least the firm who's appointed is supposed to track it, because there's a provision in the contract to that extent that they're required to notify the township when they become near the end of their contract amount, and also that the ethics board tracks it as well, so they can notify the attorney so they don't bill more than what their contract amount is. So that was a housekeeping matter that by and large shouldn't occur, because of the fact that it creates budgetary concerns. Now, this was only $400, so there's concern there. So I just would ask that if, in fact, the ethics board continues, that that monitoring occurs.
Okay.
Thank you.
Need a motion on C4, please. I'll move it. Have a second on C4? Second by Mr. Green. Roll call, please.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Green? Yes. Mr. Mollis?
Yes.
Mrs. Panos?
Abstain.
Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar? Mrs. Walker? President Gale?
Yes.
8 yes, 1 abstention.
Okay. Discussion ordinance, DO1, amending ordinance number 2012-09, unionized ice hockey fees, code 160.21, increase of approximately 15% to the unionized hockey fees for the 2016-2017 season. Mr. Marion.
Thank you, Council President. For discussion this evening, as the Council President just stated, we're looking to amend the ordinance to reflect an increase for the junior nights hockey fees for the 2016-17 season. It's been about approximately 5 years since the last increase, and again, we touched upon this during our Recreation Budget Subcommittee meeting on a number of topics, but that was one of the areas that we talked about. So Mr. Badcock is here to answer any specific questions, and then we would listen to council comments or discussion.
Any questions for Mr. Marion or Mr. Babcock on this particular?
Yeah, I have a question for
Mr.
Mr.
Butler?
Marion. Mr. Marion, what's the current fee right now?
I'm gonna turn it over to my friend, Mr. Badcock, the Director of Recreation Reg, who will give you a better overview of the total current costs.
Okay, and what's the fee gonna go to if approved? Yeah. Right, I have it on record.
Since John Piccolo and I implemented a program about 15 years ago, there's
Right.
approximately anywhere from 9 to 11 teams. So there's 9 to 11 different fees,
Okay.
and there's actually 18 to 20 different fees because we have resident and non-resident fees in each age group. And the fees will go up approximately $100 to $250. That we haven't had a fee increase in 5 years. Obviously, we love the program. We built the program. We hate to do this at all, but there are fees beyond our control that are coming from the state, New Jersey Youth Hockey, things like we pay for officials for all our home games. They've gone up considerably a couple times in the last 5 years. Administrative fees, team fees when we register. So for this should cover that.
Any other questions? Can't see that. No? Okay, so what do we want to do with this? We're looking to move this up for, first reading? Motion to move it to first reading by Mrs. Panos, second by Mr. Green. Roll call, please.
So, I'm sorry, this is a motion to introduce, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's why you're the attorney.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg?
Yes.
Mollis? Mrs. Panos? Mr. Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar? Mrs. Walker? President Cahill?
Yes.
9 yes for first reading.
Public comments on any subject matter? Yes, please.
For One Yorkshire Court and Society Hill. Very nice presentation with the budget. I love the fact that there's a public portion to comment on. What I'm wondering is why there is not this kind of a presentation for police and municipal worker contracts. It's a large portion of the budget, and why doesn't the public have a comment portion? Where they can comment on things like unused sick pay, etc. Thank you kindly.
Anybody else from the public want to be heard? Yes, sir. Just identify yourself if you could, please. Thank you. I don't know anything about it. That was taken off? Okay.
Yeah, they requested it to be rescheduled. Okay.
Apologize if you're coming out like that.
Yeah, he'll get a notice.
So it will be renoticed then. So I apologize for that. Anybody else from the public want to be heard? Any subject matter? I will close the public portion. We're going to go into executive session.
Yes, Mr. President. Need a motion we'll adjourn. We will not be coming back out to go to an executive session for the following matters: labor negotiation update, Township of Old Bridge and Teamsters Local Number 469, and affordable housing litigation update.
Need a motion to go into executive.
Council President,
Yes.
since we're not coming back, I was in the ladies' room for a comment. I just want to make one comment.
We're making a motion.
Oh, one second, I'm going to ask that we hold off and have one more council comment.
Can we just go into executive?
Okay, it was a good thing.
Go ahead.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, go into an executive session.
Roll call.
Mr. Butler?
Yes.
Dr. Greenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Green? Mr. Mollis? Yes. Mrs. Panos?
Yes.
Mr. Rosencrantz?
Yes.
Mrs. Sohar? Mrs. Walker? Yes. President Cahill?
Yes.
9 yes.